She placed the coffee gently on the table, right beside the veteran's loyal service dog. The inspector's eyes narrowed, his voice cold. "You're done here, Grace." 6 years of loyalty, erased in a single sentence. But what no one expected was that minutes later, the ground outside began to rumble, and four Marine Humvees rolled into the cafe parking lot. The sentence landed like a hammer. "You're done here, Grace." Her boss didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The words were sharp, final, the kind that cut deeper than shouting ever could. Grace Donnelly's hands trembled as she untied her apron. 6 years of loyalty gone in a heartbeat. Not because she made a mistake, not because she failed at her job, but because she stood up for a veteran and his service dog. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She simply placed her apron on the counter, whispered to her young co-worker, "Make sure he gets his refill," and walked out the door. What Grace didn't know was that someone had pressed record. Grace wasn't the type of woman people noticed first, but she was the type they remembered longest. At 35, she managed the Mason Mug Cafe, a modest spot on the edge of downtown Mason, Georgia, just 15 minutes from Fort Granger, one of the largest marine installations in the Southeast. The cafe was more than a business. Grace had turned it into a refuge. She remembered every veteran's name, the way they liked their coffee, even the dates that haunted them most. Every Wednesday morning, she hosted Heroes Hour, a tradition that began with just 3 people and grew into something sacred. A circle of veterans who found belonging in a world that often forgot them. Her own husband, Staff Sergeant Michael Donnelly, had never made it home from Afghanistan. His picture still hung above the register, smiling in a flannel shirt, coffee mug in hand. Grace had poured her grief into serving others, and in return, the town gave her its respect. Until today. It all began when Ray McMillan, a quiet former Marine, walked in with his service dog Shadow. The inspector, clipboard in hand, expression like stone, saw the dog and froze. "That animal is in violation of health code," he snapped. Grace stood firm. "He's a registered service dog. He belongs here." The inspector's jaw tightened. "Then this cafe is in violation. Either the dog goes, or you do." And when her corporate manager walked in at that very moment, she chose her company's rule book over Grace's loyalty. The verdict was swift. Termination. The cafe fell silent. Ray's hand trembled around his coffee cup. Shadow didn't move, but his eyes stayed fixed on Grace. And with quiet dignity, she walked out. For half an hour, the cafe buzzed with shock. Customers whispered. Some left. Others stayed, glancing nervously at the inspector, at the manager, at the door Grace had walked through. Then came the rumble. Not thunder, not passing traffic. Something heavier, closer. 4 Marine Humvees rolled into the lot, their engines growling. The vehicles lined up in front of the cafe, and the doors opened in unison. Colonel Richard Gaines stepped out, dressed in full Marine Corps blues, his chest decorated with medals that spoke of decades of service. Behind him, 24 Marines fell into formation. The inspector paled. The manager stepped back. And when the colonel entered the cafe, the air shifted. "You don't need to know who someone is," Gaines said coldly, "to treat them with dignity." He saluted Ray. He asked for Grace. And when he heard she had been fired for protecting a veteran and his dog, his decision was immediate. The Marines moved with purpose. They removed the corporate sign from a wall and replaced the cafe's chalkboard with a new one brought from their trucks. In bold, white letters it read, "Welcome to Grace's house, where honor is served daily." The inspector stood frozen. The manager had no words. The cafe customers began to clap softly, then louder, until the room was filled with something bigger than coffee or rules. Respect. Ray rose to his feet, his voice quiet but steady. "She never treated me like a problem. She treated me like a person. That's all I ever needed." A woman near the register wiped away tears. Others nodded, and the colonel left one final message before walking out. "You fired her for breaking a policy. We stand with her for upholding something far greater." That afternoon, Grace received a message. The base wanted her at Fort Granger, not to reprimand her, not to lecture her, but to offer her something new, a chance to lead a veterans wellness center built on the very values she had lived every day. She thought she had lost everything when she walked out of that cafe. But in truth, she had gained something greater. A mission, a legacy, a reminder that sometimes the quietest acts of courage echo the loudest. Grace's story reminds us of something simple but profound. Honor isn't about rules. It's about respect, and dignity is worth defending every single time. What about you? Have you ever witnessed a quiet act of courage in your life? Share it in the comments below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories of silent heroes who change the world.